Have you ever felt an inexplicable chill run down your spine in the dead of night, as if someone or something was watching you? Have you ever been alone, working the graveyard shift, and suddenly sensed a presence so unnerving that it sent your heart racing? The night can be a mysterious and terrifying place, where the line between reality and the unknown blurs. What if I told you that these feelings aren't just figments of your imagination? What if these haunting sensations stem from something much more sinister, something lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself? This is a story about one such night, a night I'll never forget. A night that haunts me to this day. It's a tale that will chill you to the bone and make you question everything you thought you knew about the safety of the night shift. Are you ready to hear it? It was just another night at the old convenience store where I worked the graveyard shift. I was no stranger to the quiet hours between midnight and dawn, the time when most people were sound asleep, leaving only the occasional insomniac or night owl to wander in. I didn't mind the solitude. In fact, I found it peaceful, usually. But this night was different. The air felt heavier, and there was an unsettling stillness that I couldn't shake. As I locked the door behind me and flipped the sign to closed, I couldn't help but feel like I was sealing myself into a tomb. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long, eerie shadows across the shelves. I tried to shake off the feeling, attributing it to my overactive imagination. After all, it was just another shift. Nothing out of the ordinary, right? But deep down I knew something was wrong. The first few hours passed uneventfully. I busied myself with restocking shelves and cleaning up the aisles, the monotonous tasks lulling me into a sense of routine. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, its sound blending with the hum of the refrigerators at the back of the store. It was almost 2 a.m. when I first noticed something strange. I was in the back room organizing some boxes when I heard it, a faint rhythmic tapping sound. At first I thought it was the wind rattling the windows, but when I listened closely I realized it was too deliberate, too consistent. I followed the sound, my heart beginning to race as it grew louder. It led me to the front of the store, near the entrance. I stood there, staring at the glass doors, but there was nothing outside. No one. Yet the tapping continued, as if something invisible was knocking, demanding to be let in. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My first instinct was to check the security cameras, but when I glanced at the monitor, it was filled with static, something that had never happened before. Trying to ignore the unease gnawing at me, I reached for the door handle to see if maybe a branch or some debris was causing the noise. But just as my hand touched the cold metal, the tapping stopped. The silence that followed was deafening, almost oppressive. I stood there frozen, staring out into the darkness beyond the glass, half expecting something to leap out at me. But nothing did. With a shaky breath, I stepped back and returned to the counter, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. By 3 a.m. I was starting to feel the effects of the long night. My eyes were heavy, and my mind was beginning to drift. I decided to make myself a cup of coffee, hoping the caffeine would keep me alert for the rest of the shift. As the coffee brewed, I leaned against the counter, listening to the comforting drip of the machine. That's when I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, a shadow darting between the aisles. I snapped my head around, fully expecting to see a customer who had somehow slipped in unnoticed. But the store was empty. I stood there, staring at the spot where I'd seen the movement, my heart pounding in my chest. I walked slowly down the aisle, scanning every shelf, every corner, but there was no one there. The only sound was the steady hum of the refrigerators, as if mocking my growing fear. I tried to convince myself that it was just a trick of the light, a figment of my tired mind, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The shadows seemed to stretch and shift around me, as if they were alive, watching, waiting. I returned to the counter, feeling a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I told myself I was just tired, that I was overreacting. But the feeling of being watched persisted. It was as if the store itself had come alive, the walls closing in, the air growing thicker with each passing minute. By 4 a.m. the feeling of dread had become unbearable. I could barely focus on my tasks, my mind constantly drifting to the strange occurrences that had plagued me throughout the night. The tapping, the shadow, none of it made any sense, and yet I couldn't deny what I had experienced. I decided to do another sweep of the store, hoping that moving around would calm my nerves. As I walked down the aisles, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me, just out of sight. Every time I turned around, there was nothing there, but the sensation of being watched grew stronger with each step. When I reached the back of the store, I heard it again, the tapping. But this time, It was coming from inside the store, echoing off the walls, reverberating through the empty aisles. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest as the sound grew louder, more insistent. It was as if whatever was making the noise was trying to get my attention, trying to draw me closer. I turned slowly, my eyes scanning the darkness, trying to locate the source of the sound. And then I saw it, just for a moment, a figure standing at the end of the aisle. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by the shadows. I blinked and it was gone, as if it had never been there at all. Panic surged through me, and I bolted back to the front of the store, my mind racing. What was happening? Was I losing my mind? I couldn't explain what I had seen, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone in that store. I spent the next hour in a state of heightened anxiety, jumping at every little noise, my eyes darting around the store, searching for any sign of the figure I had seen. But there was nothing. Just the oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional hum of the refrigerators or the creak of the building settling. It was almost 5 a.m. when I heard it, a voice, faint and distant, calling my name. At first I thought it was just the wind, but when it called again, I knew it wasn't my imagination. It was a low, raspy whisper, coming from somewhere deep within the store. My blood ran cold as I realized it was coming from the back room. I hesitated, every instinct telling me to stay where I was, to lock the door and wait for the sun to rise. But something compelled me to move forward, to find the source of the voice. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing in the empty store, the air growing colder with each step. When I reached the back room, the door was slightly ajar, the darkness beyond it impenetrable. I stood there, my hand hovering over the doorknob, my heart pounding in my ears. The voice called my name again, more insistent this time, as if whatever was in there was growing impatient. I pushed the door open, my breath catching in my throat as I stepped into the darkness. The room was freezing, the air thick with the smell of decay. I could barely see a foot in front of me, but I could feel the presence looming just out of sight. The voice called my name one last time, and then everything went black. I don't know how long I was out, but when I came to, I was lying on the cold, hard floor of the back room. My head was throbbing, and my body felt heavy, as if some unseen force was pressing down on me. I tried to move, but I couldn't. My limbs felt like they were made of lead. That's when I saw it, hovering just above me. A shadowy figure, its form shifting and writhing like smoke. Its face was obscured, but I could feel its eyes on me, piercing through the darkness, watching, waiting. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything to get away from that thing, but I was paralyzed, trapped in its gaze. The air around me grew colder, the smell of decay more overwhelming as the figure loomed closer. I could feel its presence pressing down on me, suffocating me, as if it was trying to absorb me, to consume me. In that moment, I knew that this was no ordinary haunting. This was something much darker, much more malevolent. It was as if the store itself had become a portal, a gateway to something beyond our world, something that had been waiting for the right moment to break through, and now it had found its way in. I don't know how I managed to break free, but somehow I found the strength to move. I rolled to the side, gasping for breath as the weight lifted from my chest. The shadowy figure recoiled, its form dissolving into the darkness, but I could still feel its presence, lurking just out of sight. I scrambled to my feet, my heart racing, and bolted for the door. I could hear the figure moving behind me, the sound of its footsteps echoing in the darkness, growing closer with each passing second. I burst out of the back room, slamming the door behind me, but I knew it wouldn't hold. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't bound by physical barriers. I ran to the front of the store, my mind racing, trying to think of a way out. The doors were locked, the security system was down, and my phone was in the back room. There was no way to call for help. I was trapped, alone in the store with whatever that thing was, and I knew it wouldn't stop until it had me. I could feel it closing in, the air growing colder, the shadows stretching towards me, as if they were alive. I backed up against the counter, my eyes darting around the store, searching for anything I could use to defend myself. But there was nothing, just the oppressive silence, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. And then, just as I thought it was over, the first rays of sunlight began to filter through the windows. The darkness receded, the shadows retreating as the light grew stronger. I could feel the presence fading, as if the sunlight was driving it back, banishing it to whatever hell it had come from. I collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath as the store slowly returned to normal. The lights flickered back on. The static on the security monitor cleared, and the oppressive feeling of dread lifted, replaced by the familiar hum of the refrigerators and the ticking of the clock. It was over. I don't remember much of what happened after that. The morning shift arrived, finding me sitting on the floor behind the counter, trembling and pale. They asked me what had happened, but I couldn't find the words to explain. How could I? How could I tell them about the shadowy figure, the voice, the overwhelming sense of dread that had nearly consumed me? I quit the job the next day, unable to face another night in that store. But even now, months later, I can't shake the feeling that it's not really over. I still see shadows out of the corner of my eye, hear faint whispers in the dead of night, and feel that same oppressive presence lurking just out of sight. I don't know what that thing was, or why it chose to haunt me, but I do know one thing. I'll never forget that night. It's a reminder that the darkness is never truly empty, that there are things out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. So, the next time you're alone on the night shift, remember my story. And if you ever feel a chill run down your spine, or hear a voice calling your name in the darkness, don't ignore it, because you might not be as alone as you think. This was just one night, one experience that has forever changed the way I see the world. The night shift can be a lonely place, but sometimes it's not loneliness you have to fear. Sometimes it's what you can't see, what you can't explain. The darkness hides many things, and not all of them are friendly. As you finish reading this story, take a moment to reflect. What if this was you? What if, the next time you find yourself alone in the dead of night, you encounter something that defies all logic, something that shouldn't exist? Would you be ready to face it? Or would it be your turn to become another story, another tale of fear on the night shift? Sleep well if you can.